Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Sales for the Nigerian Business Person podcast. It's available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, or any podcast player of your choice. So subscribe for free once you're done listening to this episode, just in case you're using your web browser to listen. Today on the show, we have audio recordings from the WhatsApp School of Business program that I advertised on Saturday, the 15th of July 2023. The goal of the program was to introduce folks to the fundamentals of doing business in Nigeria and to show how sales and business development principles can help you overcome the harsh landscape of doing business in our dearly beloved country. I also wanted to answer general business questions posed by the participants, and the program was delivered entirely over WhatsApp for the course of more than 1 week. And this is an example of how you can get truly convenient business education in your pocket and learning over WhatsApp at your convenience. If you love what you hear on the podcast and you like daily access to me, to ask me questions related on how to sell in your business, then the WhatsApp Coaching Club is now open, and the investment required for that is only 5,000 Naira a month. You ask me anything, I give you answers and assignments to move your business forward. So if you're interested, hit me up on the socials. Don't worry about how to spell my name. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, and my name, Tavashima Ayede, is the correct spelling. You can find it in the web browser where you're currently listening to this episode. You see the spelling of my name, the email address, and the photo, and it's also in the profile of the podcast app where you're currently listening to my voice. So Tavashima Ayede, the correct spelling of the name, is there. So if you're interested in the 5K, the WhatsApp Coaching Club, the 5K monthly investment, then let me know. Hit me up, send me a message on 080 6466 2140. The country code for Nigeria is +234. And for those of you who are trying to save to start a business, I'm affiliated with a reputable financial institution in Nigeria that has 504 billion naira in assets. And what that means is they're not going to go broke anytime soon. They're a secure organization to work with. They're not going to run away with your money anytime soon. They're in the business of protecting and guaranteeing your savings. This is not a bank, so you're not going to have an ATM card. You're not going to get hit by lots of miscellaneous fees. And you're going to get an interesting, or rather, you're going to get an improvement on the interest that you get from regular savings banks in Nigeria. And then, of course, this is safer than using loan sharks for the capital to start your business, because loan sharks are going to want to embarrass you and your whole family, and they want you to put your father and your mother up as credit. Sorry, not credit. What's that word? As collateral for the loan. So if you're interested, then hit me up on 080 6466 2140 to get started on saving towards your dream. Now remember, it doesn't have to be saving towards a business. Any savings plan will do. People have saved with this organization for their children's education. Let's say, like me, you have kids in primary school and you're wondering about secondary school and the all-expensive university education. And then, of course, folks like my mom saving towards retirement. So if you're interested, hit me up and let's get you started. Now, on with the episode for today. Welcome to day 2 of the sessions. Again, I'm your host, Tavashima Ayede, a sales coach and business consultant. Yesterday, which was day 1, we looked at the promise of doing business in Nigeria and freestyling on what the possible upside might be of doing business in Nigeria. So today, day 2, we're going to start delving into the problems, the challenges of doing business in Nigeria. That's a lot of what was being advertised on the promos that was being put out of on socials that's promoting the program. So we're going to start going into detail what some of these problems are and how these problems negatively affect our businesses. But of course, we're doing so with the mind view that we're going to brainstorm on solutions eventually. And remember that the approach we're going to be taking is we're going to be looking at things through a business development approach towards trying to solve these problems. So if this is your first time, if you're just signing up to the event today, and this is the first audio that you're listening to, then after you're done listening to it, you know that you have to scroll further back in the chat. You'll see the early introductory messages where I spoke about the purpose of the group and the sorts of things that we're going to be talking about over here. And you're going to catch yesterday's lecture or audio recording, rather, where we went into the promise of doing business in Nigeria. So, the first challenge we're going to look at today is infrastructure, the poor infrastructural development in Nigeria, and that is the first challenge that we're going to look at in the Nigerian business environment. Now, when we say poor infrastructural development, we mean the poor development in things like transportation systems, whether it's public transportation systems, or having good roads, or having a good railway system, because these things are important, and it wasn't always the case. Because my mother would tell me stories about growing up in a railway town. I'm Tiv from Benue State. My mom's village is Uday, and Uday happened to be one of those really vibrant communities that lived along rail tracks in Nigeria. So it was a real well, it wasn't really a rail community per se, because the village was there before the railway lines started. But the railway lines passing through kind of helped things. And back when we were kids, we would go and visit my grandmother in Uday. Sometimes we would run to the old train station. Well, not really a train station per se, because it's more or less it's like a bungalow with several what do you call these things? Several rooms next to it. So it's a long rectangular kind of bungalow with a platform where people would step on and step off, and would go and play on the tracks and then look around and things like that. But even as at that time, I'm going to go and visit my grandma in the 80s and let's say 90s. The rail facilities were already run down. I never saw a train run through there, and trains would also run through Makudi. That's for those for Nigerians who are older and who lived in that part of the world. Makudi is the capital in Benue State. So, but of course, I haven't seen any train run through Makudi, because I am of the time when, by the time I was born, late 70s, early 80s, these sorts of things were already becoming a challenge. The rail infrastructure was already dying. And it's a similar state of affairs that people can relate to no matter which part of the country. So people up north, they can relate. People in Kano, they can relate. Down south, they can relate. In the western part of the country, in the east, everybody can relate to these sorts of things. So when we say poor infrastructure development, those are the sorts of things that we mean. The poor facilities available to transport people and goods, and also by extension services across the length and breadth of the country. How do we transport services? Well, very easily. I'm a sales coach and a business consultant, and because of online technologies, Zoom and all that, I can do business with people in Lagos quite comfortably. But then there will be times when somebody will say, you know what, let's not do this Zoom thing. Why don't you come down to Lagos, or why don't you come down to Nasarawa or whatever, and let's make this thing happen. I'm going to have to hop on a plane or take public transportation or whatever. That's if I'm not fueling my car, and then off we go. And so that is how good infrastructure and transportation also affects the promotion and the utilization of services as well. So poor transportation network, of course, poor power network. We all know that because power goes off all the time. Challenges in the telecommunication infrastructure. This is one that has increased somewhat since the time I was a child, because at some point, good telecommunications backbone in Nigeria, and then things get nationalized. It's Nitel, and then things go to crap, and then there's a couple of decades of nothing but Nitel and spotty performance, and then with the return to democracy, opening up the economy with what's it called, GSM. I think it used to be called GSM back then. I don't know what they're called now, but GSM, I think, that's global systems for mobile communications or whatever, but basically technology behind mobile phones. So mobile phones into the market, we have lots of providers. It seemed to function quite well. Internet drops out every now and then. Sometimes there are some blackouts. You can't get to reach through to some people. The average business person in Nigeria, because of that problem, has 3 or 4, let's say 2 or 3 carriers. Let me put it that way. Yeah, I'll say 2 or 3, because whenever I'm at training sessions or at networking sessions, things like that, most people have two phones, two lines. Some people like me have one phone, dual SIM, two lines, but then you have some people who have two phones, dual SIMs, and two lines on each SIM because they're trying to do well, just to make up for the gaps. Then there's also challenges in water infrastructure. Not every part of the country is hooked up to urban potable water supply, and these can have some challenges for specific kinds of businesses. So for consultants like us and service-based professionals like back when I was in my wedding photography days, water wouldn't have been an issue, but for people who run restaurants, other kinds of catering services, what else, sanitation services, let me see, laundry services, for those sorts of people, then yes, water is a challenge. So as I've listed through the problems, or rather the poor infrastructure that we have in the country, what you should be doing right now if you're listening to this is making a note. Transportation, okay, how does that affect my business, whether I'm a consultant, a wedding photographer, or whether I run a laundromat, or whether I bake cakes. Power, how does that affect telecommunication? How does that affect water? How does that affect? That's because eventually we're going to open up the group here to the question and answer session. We'll be tackling questions and looking at things from a sales and business development perspective, how we can overcome or work through some of these challenges. So the problem with poor infrastructure development, of course, it affects our businesses in different ways, but these are just some of the major problems. It increases the costs of goods sold. Because transportation is poor, and let's say water is poor and power is poor, we have to provide for some of these services ourselves, and that increases the cost of goods that we're taking to the market, because we have to factor in the cost of our generators, inverters, boreholes, wells, and what have you. It increases friction in the business process, because it's hard enough to get up and do business every day without having to worry about Meirua. Meirua in this part of the world, those are the people who are water vendors, water hawkers. They move around basically with this handheld trucks that you push, and they have several gallons of 25 liter gallons where they carry water, about 10 or maybe 12. So in this part of the world, in some parts of Abuja and in lots of places in Lagos, because I lived in Ikeja before moving to Abuja. In Ikeja, Meirua is common. In Abuja, certain parts of the town, Meirua. So anyway, so if you run a restaurant, it's hard enough to worry about buying your meat, your chicken, doing the pre-cleaning, hiring, staffing, all of those concerns, then to now have to worry about where you're going to get clean water supply just to keep the restaurant running. So that's the increased friction in the business process. And then, of course, there's reduced productivity, because a lot of time is spent trying to sort out some of these things, queuing to buy for fuel, going to look for the mechanic to fix your generator plant. What else? All these other concerns. Because we spend time doing these sorts of things, it's less time spent servicing customers or looking for new customers that we can put into the business. It also leads to reduced global competitiveness for those people that are in the export market, and that's something that my brother, my mom, and I experienced firsthand back when we had the family export business, where we used to export charcoal. We started with charcoal and did a few run of some commodities. So yeah, that was a problem that we faced. Transportation is an issue. That means it leads to higher trucking costs. Higher trucking costs means that the cost of goods goes up, and then the amount that you have to sell on the international market, it causes a problem. So for things that are sold, or rather that are produced in Nigeria and Ghana, for instance, you'd find that the Ghanaians are able to sell palm oil much more cheaply than we can, even though we have more, precisely because of these sorts of problems. The palm oil folks over here have to worry about transportation, getting the stuff out of the plantations. Refinement is an issue because of power, and blah blah blah. So it has all kinds of effects, and by the time you're getting ready to the export market, it makes things really uncompetitive. Your prices are really expensive, and for a while it led to really, it was brief, and I don't know if it has occurred again, but for a brief while, it led to the absurd reality in Nigeria that at some point it was cheaper to buy, what's that thing called? Soy. It was cheaper to buy soy from America than to buy soy from Benue State. So if you were in sorry, not Abuja, back then we were based in Lagos. So you were in Lagos, you wanted soy. Yes, if you were to buy from Benue State, it would get to you sooner, or Nasarawa would get to you sooner, but it was cheaper to just export the thing from America. If you could, sorry, not export, import, if you could find a reliable buyer. So it leads to these surprising turn of events. Then there's also diminished attractiveness for investors, because if business is going to be this hard and this expensive with so many points of friction, then it's not an attractive place for investors to put their money, which is why there's all this talk of attracting international investment and blah blah blah, and how the government has to work on infrastructural challenges before that happens. Oh, sorry, excuse me. That was an alarm that I set just to make sure that I don't go too long today. Okay, yeah, we've gone over 10 minutes, so I should be wrapping this up. I should be bringing this today's today's audio resource or the lecture, bringing that to a close. So diminish attractiveness for investors, whether locally because your business doesn't look too good because your costs are high, or whether internationally because the cost of doing business is just so high that people just don't want to get in. And then there's poor employee retention and there's poor recruitment, because if your business is such a hassle to work in, people do not want to work with you. I remember being a young lawyer in a law firm, you're in the office, you're in Kano, it's hot as hell already, and then the power goes out, and you're there in the suit in the office. It's dark, it's hot, it's sweaty, and the generator has packed up again. The second generator has packed up as well, and then maybe the third generator, there's no fuel in that, so you guys just have to sit in the office. It's not a very comfortable working experience, and these are some of the things that put people off and make it unattractive for employees to work with you. In fact, at the time while I was in Kano, that was in 2007, 2008, back then, I remember that most hotels, or rather the reputable hotels in Kano, you would say on average they would have about 5-6 generators, and that was because they expected to run their generators in 8-hour shifts throughout the whole day. That's 8-hour shifts for 24 hours if need be. And that was just the state of affairs back then. However, I haven't lived in Kano since 2007, 2008, so I don't know how good things have become or how bad things have deteriorated too. So, like I said, while we are listening to these clips about what the infrastructure challenges are, we are not supposed to be going, oh, woe is me, this country is dying, this country is going to the pits, this country is going to the dogs. We're supposed to be brainstorming on solutions so that we can have impactful deliberations later. Remember, the lens we're going to be looking at this is going to be through a business development approach. The reason why we're going to be doing that is not because we should absolve the government of its responsibilities, but it's because, really, the average person like you and I has no control over macroeconomic issues. There's nothing I personally can do to bring the railways back, or to make transportation better, or to increase the effectiveness of the power grid, or to make sure that the telecommunication companies provide efficient internet services, or that we provide clean pipe-borne water to different parts of the country. So individually, there's nothing we can do about all these macroeconomic concerns. So of course, we're only going to be looking at things that are within our own sphere of influence, within our own sphere of control, and that's why we're going to be taking a uniquely business development approach towards these sorts of things. So that's it for this particular lecture on the infrastructure problems of doing business in Nigeria. The chat is still going to remain closed for now, and it's still going to remain closed for the rest of the day, and we're going to have another audio resource up later on the group about another challenge. But don't worry, we are not going to remain stuck in this mood for long, because the main crux of this group of this event is to make sure that we brainstorm solutions on how to move our businesses forward. It's my assumption that everybody here so far, I've not been able to confirm, even though there are not loads of us, that most of us are self-employed and we're in business for ourselves. So thank you very much for listening, and the next audio resource is going to come up later in the day. in the late afternoon, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you guys as a group when the chat function is open, and also to continue interacting with those of you privately who have engaged with me outside of the chat. So thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next session.